Hey guys, good morning and welcome to 10X Growth Talk. And this week we're going to talk about big game, small game. Big game, small game is that we're playing two games in life. I believe life is a big game, and I'm going to talk about rules of how people play big games and how they play the rules for small games. Then I'm going to ask everyone to take a moment to write down some small games that you're playing that you're going to convert into bigger games. This is going to have a assignment attached to doing this. I believe we're going through life playing two games. Life to me is a big game. I want to describe something that I believe. I'm going to go to small games and talk about the rules and the 5 areas I believe people do and play that leads into a small game, and then I'm going to talk about the 5 that lead into a big game. So let's talk about small games first. I believe small games start with something called guilt. To me, guilt is a selfish act. Guilt is something that you do to yourself, where you beat yourself up about a behavior or something you said or something you feel like you're doing that may not be right. To me, guilt is a small game that we play with ourselves. And the way guilt transpires, in my opinion, is when you live and you're always beating yourself up with guilt, you start creating this other game called blame. Okay, you're blaming yourself. Therefore, if I continue to blame myself about shortcomings and things that I'm not doing, that I'm guilty about for myself, then if I create guilt and blame for myself, then I'm going to do it to other people. Because you know what? The way you treat yourself, you're going to treat other people as well. So there's way too many people treating others and blaming them and creating this small game mentality, in my opinion, because they're starting by playing guilt on themselves because they are not changing a habit they should or doing things that they should be doing. And what's happening is that that's causing them to blame themselves, which when you start blaming yourself, you start blaming others. And then it causes another game that we play, which is called the procrastination game, putting things off, not doing things that we're supposed to do, and procrastinating and just not doing and not pulling the trigger on things that we have to do to better ourselves, better our families, better our relationships with coworkers, with our managers and other people. And in return, it creates another game, gossip. Okay, now we start participating in other people playing small games. There's others playing small games and we get in with them and we start playing those games with them. And we start talking about other people. We start talking about how this person does this and that, and then create this whole gossip and this whole unproductive conversation about others that we shouldn't be playing, we shouldn't be doing. And what it does, ultimately, this guilt, blame, procrastination, gossip, all of these negative things that I believe are rules of small games, commit to taking away value from ourselves and others and creating frustration and confusion. Small game players are creating confusion and frustration because of the actions they're taking. Now, I want to convert into big games because, in my opinion, I think big games are different. Big games, you got to start asking yourself a question: are people around me getting better or getting worse? If you're a big game player, then people around you are getting better. And the reason they're getting better is because you're playing a different game. Your game is so different that people are noticing that and they're actually starting to play the same game as you're playing. And to me, the rules of playing a big game is starting with confidence and responsibility. When you start with responsibility instead of guilt, okay, guilt is the other part of responsibility. Okay, I think it's the opposite sector. When you start with responsibility, you're like, hey, you know what? What am I responsible for? What can I do to change circumstances? And you can only control what you do. You can't control what others do. And then another big game rule, I believe, is commitments for improvements. I think big game players are always looking at making commitments with themselves and keeping it, making commitments with others and keeping it, and making commitments to improve, to get better, make people around them better, then become better. Their whole circumstances, their whole, network of whoever's in their room is becoming better because they're getting better, and therefore they're contributing back to others getting better. And big game players have courage to take action. Like a small game player is cowardice. The opposite of courage is cowardice. Small game players are afraid. They're afraid to play big games, and they're afraid of big game players as well, because big game players are hanging around others that want to play big games as well. They don't have time for small games. And courage to take action, to change things, to change the people they hang out with that are taking away value from them, to change their mindset of how they're thinking and to change their circumstances of what their frustrations are. Taking action. Another big game rule is increasing my capability, getting better, okay, by having people around you that teach you, but also appearing, because there's teachers all around us. Believe me, there's teachers everywhere. But the small game players do not see the teachers. They have blinders on. The teachers are not there. The big game players, they're open, they see the teachers, they learn, they apply, they get better, and then their game changes and their circumstances change it. Ultimately, I think it all leads into adding value to others. Adding value to others. So big game players are adding value, small game players are taking value away, creating frustration in its place. So I want to ask everybody, are you playing a big game or a small game? Because there's things that appear in all of our lives that appear as small games. We're all playing a small game somewhere. And we need to realize and first of all understand that where is it that we're playing a small game and how do we convert that into a big game? Because the only way to get rid of a small game is by replacing it with a big game. You cannot leave the space empty. You got to put something in its place. And small game players either do not want to have anything to do with big game players, or they want to be a part of the big game players' game. So in my opinion, if you're playing a big game, there's two kinds of people around you. People that want to get away from you as quickly as possible, or people that want to come to you and go, hey dude, I want to play that game. That's my opinion about big games and small games. See, my belief is if you're committed to become an overachiever, that's a life sentence. That is a life sentence. You cannot turn back. If you're an overachiever, it's done. Because if you've made that commitment, then you're in it for life. And you cannot change that in any way. So if you want to be a big game player, and once you start playing a big game, you become addicted to that big game so much that it becomes a life sentence to you. I want to encourage everybody in our company, everybody that's listening to this, to play big games. Take the time to fill out the sheet that's been created about converting small games into big games. I have an example there for everyone to look at. Apply it to real life stuff that has happened to you, and then convert your small game to a big game and start playing a game that's different. I appreciate everything everybody does here in this company. Till next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.